Next, I'm going to talk about how practical stuff. So this is part of the practical stuff. So enough of the hocus pocus stuff about being an entrepreneur and what kind of character you're going to have. Let's talk about practical things. For example, a friend of mine approached me and told me that she has created a product that's about to, and that she's got potential to put it into a large department store, and she just wants to know if it's viable. So I thought, okay, how much does your product cost to make? You must know how much it costs to make one unit of your product or service, or provide it as a service. You've got to work that out. So how do you work that out? For example, if you are making cosmetics, like for example we have a cosmetics brand, I have to look into how much this jar costs. I have to look into how much the label costs. I have to look into how much the actual powder that we make, how much that costs. I have to look into how much it costs to put it all together, including the shipping of the items that come from different places, the box that it goes into, and the manpower that we're going to use to combine it all together. So you might go, well, I don't know how much it is for one. No, you don't need to know how much it is for one. What you need to know is, for example, if you have made 10 kilos of powder and you have ordered 5,000 of these jars, and it costs you, 4,000 just to ship the jars over to you, and it costs, you ordered 2,000 labels and so on. You add all those costs up, you figure out how many you've managed to make out of all that spending, and then you divide it by the number that you've made. You've got to do that. You have got to figure out how much one item costs you. When you've understood how much one item costs you, you can then put a retail price or a wholesale price to your one item that is actually going to be profitable to you. Because you've got to remember that it's all well and good creating a fantastic product, but if you can't make any money out of it, then you're going to find yourself in a serious pickle months down the line. And this is only made worse when you get into larger distributors. If you think that somehow, you're going to make a small fortune once you get into the likes of, a Sephora, for example, or a Woolworths, or wherever it is that you're trying to get into, whoever the biggest distributors are of your type of product. If you think that somehow all those pricing issues are going to go away because of volume, it's not true. It's only going to become more obvious and worse if you have mispriced your selling point, your retail or your wholesale price. So it's very important to know how much each one of your items is costing you to produce. When you know how much your items are costing you to produce, then you can look at how much it's costing you to function. If you're making your product in your kitchen and you've got one person helping you, that is still a cost. The cost of the electricity that you're using, or the space that you've taken up in your home to produce your product. If you're a service business like my salons, for example, you have to look at how much your rents are costing, how much your rates are, how much your taxes are, VAT, all of these things have to go into the calculation. Why then, but this brings up the big point about having written a business plan. Loads of people think, I'm not bothering with a business plan. I'm not looking for investment, so I don't need to write a business plan. And I'm not talking about these fancy schmancy business plans. I'm talking about at least understanding your costs, down to the penny and putting in contingencies for it. Imagining if you've miscalculated by 20%, add more costs. Add more costs. If you've calculated your costs down to a T and you figured out that your product is costing you 50 Rand or £2.50 or $5, whatever currency you're living in, you figured out how much it's costing you, and then add another 50 Rand to it. Double that cost. Just double the cost and say, okay, no, that's what it's actually costing me. Because all those problems, just add more cost and then price it and see if you can even price it within the right range for your customer. For example, the other day, I make a really mean chili sauce. And so I thought, I wonder if I should package this and put it into a bottle. So I went and bought a kilo of onions, or 2 kilos or whatever it was, a small amount of onions, a small amount, and I made this sauce and I added up. Okay, the kilo of onions cost me this much, the chilies that I used cost me this much, the tomato I used, and so on. All the things that I used and how much I'd spent and how many bottles of it did I, how much the bottles were costing, the glass jars were costing me, and then how many did I actually make out of it. So once I'd made my mix, I then bottled them and I saw that I made something like 18 bottles of this chili. And I thought, okay, and how much did I spend? Oh, I spent so much money, and I divided it by 18. And I found out that the cost of my production, excluding the gas and the use of my kitchen and so on, was costing me something like £3 or $5 or 60 Rand just to make it. But it's a chili sauce, and chili sauces on the market are going for 40 Rand or something like that. You can't, and I realized that my product was too expensive to produce in this way. I was either it was 60 Rand, and therefore I was going to have to sell it for 120, 150 Rand, which is about $10. Okay, so it's a gourmet chili, homemade, blah, 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 fantastic. But, how many of them am I going to sell at $10 or 150 Rand? Not a lot. And so what's the point? I want to make a lot. So I have to look into my production costs. I have to look into it. Had I not done that exercise and not understood that the onions that I'd purchased, or that the tomatoes, or the location that I'd got these things from was too expensive, had I not done that exercise, I would have carried on making my chili and selling it, for example, for 80 Rand or 65 Rand, basically making 5 Rand on top of, without pricing my gas, of course, and the use of my house and so on. And then I put it out there for that price, and then I find that I cannot sustain the production of my business. I somehow never seem to make any money. That's what will happen to you. That's what happens. I see it happening to people. They make these products, they don't price them properly, they don't sell them at the right price, and everything goes pear-shaped.